So what have I been up to this week? I finished up most of my classes this week, being the last week of the third term. Primary schools guys had a really fun day. They've been building some Pinewood Derby cars. So we took the racetrack ramp into the primary school on Monday, and they basically had spent their time racing their cars, which was really kind of fun. So what else have I been doing? I haven't really had a chance to do much woodworking on camera. Just playing around the other day and just making a little jarrah box. Playing with the lid, but I haven't really had a chance to film it because, you know, I've been busy. I think they come up alright. Needs a bit of sanding though. So let's just play with that. So today I did sharpen up that chisel last week, so I thought I'd just go through quickly how I sharpen my chisels. And we can have a look at the difference between the standard machine finish of this one compared to where we get to after we sharpen it. Cool. So the one on the right, the 18mm chisel, that's the one I haven't actually touched up the edges yet. You can still see where the factory grind around here, where it's a little bit hollow ground. You can also still see the machining marks on it. The 10 was the one that the factory grinder was actually not very good and was actually quite blunt on that one. Well, relatively blunt. You'd still cut yourself with it, but it was a bit harder. So I've touched this one up. It's actually really now quite nice and sharp. The 18mm chisel, that's the one I'll touch up today. So all I use, it's a little bit like Paul Sellers' technique. Well, it pretty much is the same as Paul Sellers' technique. Several guys use this. Several guys have probably shown it on YouTube. But all I'm using is a big flat paving stone that I picked up from the big box store down the road. It's the flattest one I could find. I was looking for glass and stuff like that, but I haven't been able to find any glass, so I use this. And then I've gone to the expense of getting some wet and dry for about 90 cents a sheet. Some 240, some 400, then 600. The only thing I do find is the grits aren't always written on in all the places you need it, so I try to write the grit on there so when you cut off the part where it's pre-printed, like that, when you cut that off here and you forget which grit it is, so that you can remember. Bit of 8. And because I've always got this sitting around for when I'm sanding up the yarn bowls, I've always got sharpening paper sitting around. And Chemical X. Quite literally the cheapest window cleaner I can get. So, I'm going to start by flattening off the back of my chisel. So, all I'm doing is on the edge. Well, this would be more flat if we could get glass as opposed to the paver, but sometimes you make do with what you've got. From that you can see I've got most of the machining marks off. Getting there. A little bit more. That's better. So now I'm going to move on to the bevel, find the angle and make sure that doesn't move. It's important to try and hold it flat on the on the paper at the angle you'd like, trying not to move it around too much so that you don't lose your square. That's infinitely better. So now I've taken out the little hollow that I had from the standard factory grind, and it's much flatter, much better, and I can feel the wire sticking around the other side now. So I'll just knock that off. It's much better. Cool. Maybe a 240 over the road. 400. Effectively all I'm going to do is repeat the process going up the grits. So if you're lucky, I'll fast forward through this bit.
You don't know where I'm going to hide your balls, but the music will tell you.
So, that didn't really take too long to get to that point now. I tend to only go up 1200 grit using the sandpaper, and now it's a very different beast from where we started. And the last thing I do is, I've got one of these expensive bits of suede stuck onto a block of wood. I don't know why I got that, but I'd love to be able to just get some suede and find the right bit of suede down at the local haberdashery and put it onto a block of wood so that I can just get a bigger one of these too. So the last thing I do is a little polish on the strop. A little polish on the strop here. And that is pretty much done and dusted. Okay, so a couple of minutes work. You'll notice now this one here is the one that I've just done. It's no longer got the groove that was in there from the factory sharpening, factory grind. We're now, not a lot of work, it's pretty much almost a mirror finish. It's not a great mirror finish, but it's a mirror finish. It's 1200 grit. It is much sharper now, and you can pretty much shave with that one now. I'll show you the back. It's the back now. You can see between here and here it's now a mirror finish. Up here I can see a little bit of the machining mark still, but that's away from where the working face is. So I've got a flat back to the chisel. It's flat, flat, little hollow there, but for the most part now that's much flatter, and it should work with a lot less effort. So to do these curls is requiring quite a bit of force through the chisel. So that's the technique I use for sharpening my chisels around here. I also, where I work in the woodwork room at the school I work at, I also sharpen the chisels in the room pretty much using that way. I haven't got a paver at work there. What I use is one of the cast iron wings of the thicknesser, and then when I finish I go back and have to polish off all the shaving so that it doesn't rust, but that works really well. And when you break it down into bite-sized chunks, you can get through. There's 96 chisels on the benches there, plus some in the cupboards. When you go through that, it actually goes through pretty quickly. You can see, just with one chisel, it seems to take a time, but when you can batch out your work, you actually go really quickly through quite a lot of chisels. I don't go much more than 1200 grit. You do have waterstones and things like that. I haven't got them because basically I haven't been able to justify investing the money into them yet, but maybe one day. This way, all up, the setup would maybe cost me about $4 in sandpaper every so often, and $1 in window cleaner. So it's a quick and cheap way of sharpening your chisels. I don't currently have a really good way of sharpening my wood turning chisels yet because I basically need to invest in the grinder. I've just got a cheap and nasty old grinder that I used to have. I need to dress the wheels and do all sorts of stuff, so I'm hoping soon I'm going to spend a bit of money in that area and get a better grinder, some nice wheels, and probably a jig to be able to get the bowl gouge grinds properly done rather than just freehanding them near enough. So if you've got any suggestions as to what works really well there, any suggestions would be really greatly appreciated. You could probably leave them in comments below. Well, that's about the size of it. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later on.